Let's talk about Guardian for a minute, because Guardian is an incredible character, but I rarely see people other than myself using him. I think that's because his dodge is not as good as the other characters, but he's got an incredible set of unique abilities that actually make him really fun to use and pretty easy to use as well once you get used to him. He's actually a very safe character to use, and he's a character that you can use to keep your friends alive as well. If you have friends that are new to the game and you're trying to guide them a little bit, I'd highly recommend Guardian. So I'm going to talk about his unique abilities a little bit, but also the relics that I pair with Guardian in order to make those unique abilities a little bit better. So let's start by talking about his character skill. This is the character skill that you're seeing right here on screen. So this Whirlwind normally only lasts for like 1 second. It'll throw enemies up into the air, which is really nice, but there's a relic that says increased duration of character skill. And that is a really nice relic, because what it'll do is make the Whirlwind last 6 or 7 seconds. It'll no longer throw enemies up into the air, but instead it'll just throw them around for that entire duration. It's really handy for encounters with banished knights, especially when you go to the center castle. It'll just kind of make them swirl around for the entire time, and you can get quite a bit of damage on them during that time. In fact, you can kind of take them down in that time if you have all 3 players that are on it pretty quickly, and you can kind of just move from banished knight to banished knight using those Whirlwind abilities, especially if you have multiple guardians and you don't really have to wait for the skill cooldown. You can just go banished knight to banished knight, trap them in the Whirlwind, and just kind of mow them down really quickly and effectively and safely. Now, another great thing about that character skill is that while the Whirlwind is happening, any enemies that try to interrupt you and come hit you from behind are just going to get stuck in the Whirlwind as well. So like I said, it's really safe to use. The other thing is, as a little bonus, it will actually deflect arrows and crossbow bolts. So let's talk about the character's ability, which is what you're seeing right now. So this is the Steel Guard. So you do this by holding block and then pressing dash. And when you do this, what happens is your endurance actually steadily goes down over time. However, your guard boost goes incredibly high. It becomes nearly impossible for enemies to guard break you at that point, unless your endurance is already really low when you take that attack. But otherwise, if you look at how much stamina damage I'm taking when the enemies hit me when I'm in that mode, it's an extremely small amount. Now, we have a relic that enhances this as well, and the relic says reflect a portion of damage received when using ability. So it's a little bit misleading. It doesn't reflect like a percentage of damage or anything like that. What it does is it creates that little blast that you're seeing, that kind of yellowish blast that just does a little bit of damage. More importantly though, it actually does some stance damage. So if you're just deflecting and playing very defensively and just holding the aggro for your team, you're actually going to help them earn stance breaks, and you're going to be able to get critical attacks on the enemies, which is huge. Using the Steel Guard is your best bet when you're the last man standing, because what it'll do is when you take hits, it'll actually refill your ultimate art gauge in addition to keeping you safe. And then you can do what you just saw there, which is to revive your teammates with one use of the ultimate art gauge. So this is the best tool in the game for reviving the team. It will get your teammates up even if they're on a tier 3 revive, which normally takes forever when you're hitting them with normal weapons. I think the only other ultimate art that can get your teammates fully up from a tier 3 revive would be Revenant. However, I would say Guardians is better, because Guardians also does a fair amount of damage to the enemy, and it does a good amount of stance damage there as well. There's also a relic that I pair with this. The relic says slowly restore the health of allies after using your ultimate art. It restores your own health as well. That's not the exact wording of it, but it's something along those lines. So essentially, when you hold it, once you hit the ground, you can kind of hold that stance there. That will make you invincible while you're holding it, so you don't have to worry about getting punished or anything like that. But it's going to refill the health of your allies actually really quickly. And even if they're completely down and you have to revive them, they're going to get up to half. If you hold that, it'll get them all the way up to full, so you can get the squad all the way up to full strength. Okay, so in addition to the relics that I talked about earlier to enhance the inherent skills that Guardian has, there's a number of things that I actually look out for when I'm creating my build going through day 1 and day 2. So the main things would be to improve guarding ability. So this is going to improve your guard boost. You can also improve your guard boost by finding a higher quality shield or upgrading the shield that you have. And that's actually one of the small drawbacks of Guardian, I guess, is that you really want to have two smithing stone level 2s by the end of the run so that you can level up your shield and your weapon. Ideally, you're going to find a purple level weapon or shield somewhere along the way, and you're not going to have to go to 2 different mines, but there are cases where you might have to go to a second mine if you're not sure that you're going to end up getting what you're looking for. It really is helpful having a purple shield, and in fact, if you only have one level 2 smithing stone, it's worth considering leveling the shield up over the weapon. But at the end of the day, a purple shield is fine. As long as you level it up at least once, just maybe at the end of the second day before the Night Lord, you should be okay. But it definitely does make a big difference. So let's talk about guard counters a little bit. Guard counters are super fun. Guardian is one of 2 characters that is really fun to play with around guard counters specifically. So the other one is Executor, who handles much differently. But Guardian can do these enhanced guard counters where you hold the heavy attack and you do a charged guard counter. Now, one thing I want to point out is that normally when you block these attacks that kind of send you flying back a little bit, you do this really cool kind of backflip animation, but it puts you out of range to get the guard counter on an enemy. But when you have the halberd and you do the charged guard counter, you actually run forward a fair bit and it closes the gap so you can actually hit the enemy, which is really cool. So let's kind of close the loop on passives though, because I started talking about that for a second. So in addition to the improved guarding ability, the other ones that I look for would be improved guard counters, because I really like to do guard counters with Guardian, and it helps to have a little bit of extra damage from that. And then I like to go for improved stance damage. So guard counters already do a pretty good amount of stance damage, so enhancing that a little bit makes it so you're going to get a lot more stance breaks, and then that kind of leads me to the next thing that I look for, which would be improved critical attacks. So if you're actually leaning into the guard counters, you're going to find that you're getting quite a few stance breaks and quite a few critical attacks, so it actually pays to be able to do a little bit more damage in those situations as well. Now this is one thing that you have to be careful of a little bit right here. So when you go into the steel guard and you take these big attacks that kind of send you flying, you kind of keep your guard up, but it takes a second to stand back up and be able to change direction and reorient yourself towards the boss. So if he comes in like swooping for a follow-up attack like he just did there, he's going to hit you from behind and you're not really protected. So the guard angle is really just your front. It's not your entire body. So you have to make sure that you're positioned properly. Another thing I want to point out here is that I was just using a medium shield in that last clip. You really don't need to be using a great shield with Guardian. It definitely helps. That'll have the best guard boost. But again, when you're using the steel guard, your guard boost is incredibly high anyways, and you actually can get by with a medium or even a small shield. So if you find something that maybe has, like, I don't know, the glint blade phalanx or something like that, or like periodic glint blades, that's what I'm talking about. So if you find a shield that has something like that and you just want to get a little bit of extra free damage, but it's on a medium shield or a small shield, by all means, like, you could use it, and it's totally fine as long as you're using the steel guard. You're not going to get broken, stance broken immediately like you would in base Elden Ring. So this Demi-Human Swordmaster, this is another example of an enemy who will get completely locked down by this Whirlwind attack. So this is a boss where if you're doing solo runs, actually, this ability is going to come in incredibly handy. The duo bosses are a little bit tricky when you're by yourself. So there's actually the ultimate art being used offensively. It's really nice when there's a group of enemies and you can just take out 5 or 6 guys at once. But when you're fighting the Demi-Human Queen and the Demi-Human Swordmaster at the same time, or again, the Outlands Commander and the Banished Knights, just being able to trap one of them in that Whirlwind, it's very valuable just to have one of them that's not attacking you, and to be able to kind of control the pace of the fight and the positioning of the fight, the way you want to. It's really nice. Like, this is a character that kind of allows you to control space a little bit better. You can hold your ground by, using that steel guard and really leaning into the guard counters, stance breaking enemies, knocking them down, holding them into place with the Whirlwind. It's just a really good, well-rounded character that allows you to kind of stay safe, do consistent damage, And he's really good for protecting your teammates and keeping your teammates alive as well. So I want to share 2 more quick tips with Guardian. So one is that when you use the Steel Guard, that little blast will actually help you to revive your teammates. And if you're in a situation where you're not really able to hit your teammates because the boss is being too aggressive, you can stay in the Steel Guard and try to revive your teammate that way. Now the other tip that I wanted to give you, this is mainly for when your teammate is down and they have the tier 3 revive, and you don't have your ultimate art ready and you're a little bit away from getting it. One thing that you can do to kind of mitigate the little stamina breaks that you have to take is use that Whirlwind, right? So hit your ally until you're out of stamina, create that Whirlwind, which just does like the tiniest little bits of tick damage to them. It's, that's not going to fully revive them or anything. It's not really going to contribute much, but it's going to keep ticking them, and it's going to stop the purple from decaying while you give it a couple seconds to actually get your stamina all the way back up, so you can do more of a flurry of attacks instead of just doing, one attack and then wait for your stamina, and then one attack and wait for your stamina, because normally the decay is very quick and there's not really much of a delay before the decay starts when you get to that tier 3 revival.
I hope I've encouraged you to give Guardian another look if you've tried him and not liked him in the past. He's a really fun character. I promise you'll have fun with him. Anyways, that's it. Thanks for watching.